On August 11th, history was made with the final flight of Hawaii Mars, a 1945 built Martin JRM Mars. This massive flying boat turned water bomber made its last ever landing in Patricia Bay, just west of Victoria International Airport. Hawaii Mars took off from Sprout Lake for the last time and then flew down the eastern coast of Vancouver Island. It passed over YYJ Airport and down to downtown Victoria before coming back north, and was actually accompanied part of the way by the Snowbirds. This was an incredible send-off to an airplane that's been a fixture of Vancouver Island and the rest of BC for decades, and it is very fitting that Hawaii Mars will be preserved here at the British Columbia Aviation Museum.
Flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground. Up and down, they're frightfully keen, those magnificent men in their flying machines. They can fly upside down with their feet in the air. They don't think of danger, they really don't care. Newton would think he had made a mistake to see those young men and the chances they take. Those magnificent men in the flying machines, they go up to the up, they go down to the down, down. They enchant all the ladies and see all the scenes with their up to the up, and their down to the down, down.
Duckling.
Up, down, flying around, looping the loop and defying
Inland Lake.
the ground.
Powell Lake, Cranberry Lake, Sleaman Lake, Powell River and Dam, Georgia Strait, Malaspina Strait,
Courtenay Airpark, Comox Airport, and Air Force Base.
Texada Island Airport.
So many places to land an amphibian.
Today I'm going to calibrate the EFIS compass. So I've set the plane up on the apron. There's no compass rose at this airport, so I'm just going to rough this in the first time around just to see if the calibration steps work for me. Then I'll calibrate it better in the future when I find an airport with a compass rose painted on the apron. And then in the air you can also do it once you're flying. So the plane right now is pointing east according to the magnetic compass, and I've got the dyno on into its calibration phase. So let's push east according. Okay, I think it says it's done for the east. Now I've got to switch it 90 degrees 3 times to south, west, and north and do the same thing. Okay, now we're pointed south. Same procedure. Let's move it again. Okay, now we're pointing west. Another compass point to calibrate. There's west. Okay, that's west. Now the plane is pointing north. One last point. There's the north button. Well, it says it's complete, so I guess it's done. Press save when calibration complete. Okay, it says it's all completed. Press finish. Okay. Oh, I like these basic steps. Excellent. So I think the compass calibration is done. And according to the compass up here, we're pointing 002, which is about north. Okay. Well, that's a good step done. Another thing to tick off the task list. Okay, exciting times here. This is the first time that the plane is going to move under its own power. So this will be an opportunity to check the engine controls, check the brakes, check the steering. And what I'm going to do, after having already warmed up the engine, I'm just going to go down a little ways, maybe 100 feet down the apron here, turn around, come back, and then probably take it down Hangar Alley and position it outside my hangar entranceway. Because a bit of a bugger pushing it around for one guy. Anyway, wish me luck. Here we go. Clear prop. Well, you can see I didn't move 1 centimeter. Even at 4,000 RPM, the plane sat there quite contentedly and not interested in moving at all. So all I can assume is my brakes must be at least partially closed. So I'm going to have to spend some time on the brakes, which I haven't done since I installed them and then put in the brake fluid and bled them. So it's got to be that. Right? What else can it be? It has to be the brakes are stopping the plane from rolling. Okay? That's the next step. So, my engine was running fine. And when I released the brakes, the plane did not move. Not with 3,000 RPM, 3,500 RPM, the plane didn't move at all. So, what could it be? Well, in flight training we learn all about the forces on the plane. Lift, weight, those are the ones that give you the up and down motion, and thrust from the engine, and drag, the resistance of the plane move through the air. So thrust and drag is what gives you your forward motion. Well, since I'm on the ground, there's no lift or weight to worry about. It strictly comes down between thrust and drag, and on the ground the only drag could be from the brakes on the wheels. The brakes must have been locked up for there to be excessive drag to overpower the thrust from the engine and prevent me from going forward. So that was the first thing to check. So dragged the plane back into the hangar, jacked her up, and sure enough the wheels spun freely, and when I applied the brake mechanism, they stopped quickly. So it wasn't the brakes. So it had to be thrust. Well, the engine was obviously running, and it was putting out a lot of RPM. It seemed to be running fine. So, of course, attached to the engine is the prop. The prop is what actually gives you your thrust. And you get the thrust by spinning the prop blades at a certain pitch. And the pitch gives the screwing action through the air mass. So I checked my prop pitch with the help of a veteran pilot here, and we quickly ascertained that at least the prop blades were pointing in the right direction. But we could quickly see too that there was almost no angle. There's no pitch angle at all. So that's why we weren't getting any thrust. Basically the prop is freewheeling in the air, not screwing its way through the air the way it's supposed to. So what I did is I went back to my instruction manual and reviewed the process, how you establish the pitch on the prop, and then I also went to my log, my online log, which you can look up at KitLog Pro, search for Spirit of Mackenzie. Anyway, here are 2 printed pages from that log. One of them where I assembled the hub, and the other one where I put the prop on the engine and then adjusted the pitch. And sure enough, right there in my notes was the mistake I made. So here's how you set the pitch on your propeller, or in my case, how you don't do it, and then how you fix it. So my warp drive propeller came from the supplier with this nice protractor, which is really useful or required for setting the pitch of your propeller blades. It's also quite useful on other areas of the plane. I've used it for setting, for instance, the angle on my flaps. Anyway, the way you use it is you start off with establishing a baseline. Now, normally most planes are tricycle gear, which means they have a wheel at the front, not a tail wheel, and so they sit horizontally. So you just start from that position. But with a tail wheel plane, you've got this angle down. Now you can either bring your fuselage up, make it level, in which case this hub here will be perpendicular already, or I decided, because that's a bit difficult to do, I decided to leave my tail wheel on the ground, which means I follow a slightly different procedure, which led to my mistake. So what you do is you put your protractor edge on here, and then you measure the angle that the prop is off the vertical. So just getting the little bubble lined up here, that looks good, and then measuring the angle of the white inner dial against the numbers on the gray dial, I come to just over 14, but less than 14 and a half, so say 14 and a quarter degrees. That means my prop is 14 and a quarter degrees off the vertical when the plane is in its tail dragger position. Then what you do is you establish what pitch angle you want at the tip of your blades. In my case, the warp drive technician suggested to me that 12 degrees of pitch angle is appropriate for at least a starting position for this setup, this plane, this motor, this prop. So what you're supposed to do is add 12 degrees to your angle you've already got the plane sitting at. So I should have added 12 to 14 and a quarter to get 26 and a quarter, and then when I go out to the tip and I secure the protractor to the tip of a horizontal blade, I set the level, I set it for 26 and a half degrees. And what I did wrong, because in all these instructions, which are written really for conventional planes with the engine and prop at the front, and then they throw in a offhand comment, but for a pusher setup like mine, you do this. And that's where I got a little bit confused. So instead of adding the 12 degrees to the 14 and a quarter, I subtracted 14 and a quarter minus 12, 2 and a quarter degrees. That's what I set my propeller pitch at. And 2 and a quarter degrees, thinking about it now, it's obvious. It's practically zero. With zero pitch angle, you're going to get no thrust out of the propeller. But anyway, back then I was blindly following the instructions. I thought made a simple error for the wrong reasons. I thought I was correct, and I was wrong. I am pretty sure I'm wrong. So what I'm going to have to do now is loosen up the clamping bolts on the 3 blades, and then I twist the prop blade, each one, set them to 26 and a quarter degrees. And then we'll try the engine and run up again and see if we move. Okay, so now I'm going to loosen off the 4 hub bolts on each of the 3 blades. You have to loosen them all off so that you can adjust the one blade, because if 2 of them are too tight, even though this one's loose, it'll be difficult to adjust the blade.
They enchant all the ladies and see all the scenes with their up and their down, up and down, flying around, looping the loop.
Okay, step 1. having loosened off the clamping bolts on each blade and also loosened off these 6 hub mounting bolts a little bit so that the blades will move, I've mounted the protractor out on the tip of this horizontal blade with the protractor white dial set at 26.25 degrees. And in this position, of course, the bubble is off a little bit because the blade is still at 2.5 degrees. So what I'm going to do now is twist the blade until this bubble in the spirit level is right between the 2 black lines. And that looks like it. That was easy. And no magic of editing in there. So this one is set at 26.5 degrees, or 26.25 degrees, which gives me 12 degrees of pitch. And sure enough, when I look down the blade, it is definitely, obviously, twisted more than it was before I started this procedure. So what I'll do now is I'll just tighten this one up a little bit. What was that old saying again from kindergarten? Righty tighty, lefty loosey? I don't know. 10 years building a plane and I still don't automatically turn the nuts and bolts in the right direction. My defense is that with these locking nuts that you use on these A-end bolts, it's sometimes a little disconcerting as you turn the nut one way or the other. You can't tell if it's getting tighter or looser because it's kind of locked. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, just check again in case I loosened or moved it. No, it's perfect. 26.25 degrees. So I take the protractor off. And rotate the prop to get the next blade into the same close to horizontal position that the first one was in. I'm using the edge of the roof out there against the blue sky to roughly measure that. Apparently that's good enough. Sighting the bubble here as I twist that blade. Looks good. Okay, one more blade to go. Okay, 26.25 degrees, which gives me 12 degrees of prop pitch on each blade. Well, clearly, it takes a village to raise a child. Yikes. After that whole exercise, which I've just described to you in painful detail, I was looking at one of the prop blades and comparing the pitch to what it looked like before in photographs. couldn't really see any difference, couldn't figure out how the blade would achieve a screwing action through the air. Wandered over to another friend's experimental to look at his prop, and sure enough, there's a much more distinctive twist in the blade in his. So across Hangar Alley here, where another pilot, he's actually a helicopter AME, was sitting enjoying his morning coffee. Explained my trouble to him to just get my frustrations out. He said, "Hey, let me have a look." And he came over and I explained this whole procedure to him, which he's familiar with, just as I explained it to you. And he said, "Yeah, but forget all that." He says, "I can see you don't have the blade set in the right direction, and you have no pitch." So explained the protractor to him. Like I say, he was familiar with it in a different format, and he said, "No, here's where it should be." And he did it sort of by eye, and then he read the protractor, and now the protractor was reading close to 2 degrees. I'm flummoxed. I don't know what I did wrong before. I don't know what I did wrong just now before I talked to my colleague. But now looking at the blade, it is clearly leading edge pointing forward a bit, just as described in the manual. It looks right. Well, there we go. With 2.5 degrees set on the inner dial, or 2.25 degrees, I've got the pitch I want on the blade. So I'm going to do the other 2 blades, and I'm going to run up the engine, and I'm going to test this thing, and I'm going to stop thinking about this so much and do what looks right to a large extent. Oh my God. Well, after that lesson in humility, I've now got the 3 blades set to what I believe is the right pitch according to the protractor, and more importantly, according to the eye and according to the help and advice of a seasoned and trained mechanic. So now I'm just tightening up the clamping bolts to the right torque, 120 inch-pounds. Now I've done the 3 prop blade clamping sets of bolts, and now I'll just have to do the hub. The hub, since they're bigger bolts, are done to 180 inch-pounds according to the manual. Here.
Flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground. Up and down, they're frightfully keen, those magnificent men in their flying machines. They can fly upside down with their feet in the air.
Okay, well, here we go. I'm on the engine test stand, i.e. it's tied back to a curb which is anchored in the ground. I've warmed the engine up, and I got 3 looky-loos, hanger rats, hanger mates, who've just turned up to watch this. So now I'm going to give it some RPM and see if I can pull against the tie-back rope. Air prop. definitely got some thrust there at the very end there. I was at 5,300 RPM, which is where I want to be for maximum RPM. I think they call it the static RPM. So I don't have to adjust my pitch at this point anyway. I can do some taxiing tests, and especially gratifying to have a successful engine run-up prop check test with the 3 spectators, all very experienced pilots and home builders themselves looking on. Okay, here we go. Engine run-up was fine, was developing thrust on the strop. Let's see if she'll taxi now. Try to turn this thing into a motorized go-kart or motorized lawn ornament. Still short of a plane. Clear prop. Well, she's definitely a motorized lawn ornament now. So you could see that she was moving under her own power. She steered a little bit, but then when I did a hard left-hand turn, the tail wheel wouldn't come back, so I can only turn to the left. I thought by giving it a bit more power, maybe that would drag the tail wheel to center, but I can't really give it power where it is right now, too close to things. So I'm going to jack up the plane, get the tail wheel back into the right orientation for going forward, and I'll move straight ahead till I got a lot more surface area to maneuver in out of the run-up area, and then I'll try, maybe I'll go to the right first and see if I can get it to recover and go straight and then go to the left. But feels good, we're moving. So I've now manually put the tail wheel back into its fore and aft orientation, and I'm gonna taxi out into the run-up area where I got more space to try to do some turns, and maybe I'll do some gentle turns first and make sure the tail wheel comes back when I kick opposite rudder. But let's give her a try.
In their flying machines, they go up to the up, they go down to the down, down. They enchant all the ladies and see all the scenes with their up to the up, and their down to the down, down. Up, down, flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground. Up, down, they're frightfully keen, those magnificent men in their flying machines. Up, down, flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground. Up, down, they're frightfully keen, those magnificent men in their flying machines.
Well, just as I was finishing up my taxi run there, the engine stalled, and then it started again fairly quickly. And I didn't notice anything other than that, but one of the onlookers went out onto the tarmac and he recovered this, one of my air filters from the left-hand side carburetor. Obviously came off and passed through the prop. No damage to the prop, but an otherwise great news day, there's a little bit of bad news, but I guess it's all a learning experience, eh? Hey, I'm sure Elon Musk would think this is the correct way. If you don't blow things up when you're testing, you're not learning. But I can't afford to blow anything up. Fortunately, at this point, it's just a
relatively cheap air filter.
That's all, folks.